Okay, hello people. This week, in honor of the turkey season, of everyone eating, I thought let's all be thankful, you know, the proto molecule hadn't torn us apart. This week is Caliban's War by James S.A. Corey. This is one of the only series of books where I think it has two authors and I end up liking it. I don't know, it's very rare. In any case, this is book 2. I usually don't go this close, but it's enjoyable. It's very fun, so I wanted to go back in. The big question always in a series, do I need book 1? Is book 1 a requirement? And I will say, for this one, it isn't. I don't know how the rest of the series is going to go. I'm going to get to it. I'm full on buying these books, so factor that in how you will. But the way they pick up, he fills you in fast enough so that you don't technically need to have read book 1. Will it make it more enjoyable? Absolutely. It's just added. It really would help. But it doesn't, if you just have number 2 and you just want to try number 2, even the ending, if you don't read the epilogue, will cut off in such a way that you could come in and out of book 2 and it's contained. I think you'll be leaving a lot on the table, but it's not a requirement. And it's not onerous. I've seen some books that spend a good page or 2 in filler to bring you back up to speed. So like if I've already read book 1, this is like a rehashing. He doesn't do this. He's able to do it quickly to grab the points he needs and move you into where you need to be. Rating. This is the entire series so far, book 1 and 2, have been a 5 out of 5. This is fun for one and all. Recommend it to your casual friends. If you're a casual and you have a book, a reader friend, and you're like, what do I get them as a gift? Get them the Expanse if they don't have it. They will enjoy it. It's very fun. Well, maybe, I want to take a risk because I haven't read, it's 9 books, I think, 8. So that's a lot. But so far, the way we're going, I can't imagine he drops the ball here at the end. I can't imagine it. It's possible. We'll find out. Maybe hold off on the entire series. You get him 1 or 2 books. Yeah. I can safely say book 1 and 2 are good. The way that's written, each chapter is a character's point of view. And this book, we have obviously Holden, our ship Capitan, but we end up with Bobby, Prax, and Avasarala. These are our new sort of perspectives. We start with Bobby. Bobby is a Martian. This is some of the best structural use of a book that I've seen. We use the different perspective to move the story along. Right? Something's going to happen to Bobby. We also use it as an explainer. Right? She's on Ganymede. Ganymede's the breadbasket of this zone. Right? Farmers, this and that. And it's her point of view. So she doesn't care too much about farming. She understands that. What she cares about is we weren't on patrol before because it was a farm planet. Who cares? And now we're eyeing each other. It's her and some UN Marines from Earth staring at each other from, like a demilitarized zone. Every day we look at each other. Every day it could be a fight. because there's more of a fight outside in the universe. So it's able to explain to me backstory. But then you'll have it in some books where backstory is being told in a way that the character wouldn't. We don't do that. Or even if you don't do that in a book where I have to fill this in as the author, it's a divergent from this character we're dealing with. He didn't do that either. So we use the perspective of each character to fill in more background while we move the story forward with more interesting things, while we move their actual characters forward in the things that they care about. All at the same time, constantly through the whole book. It is wonderfully done. I mentioned it about the bread basket, right? And so you toss me a ball while I'm reading a science fiction book, your mind goes off. So I have the idea of a bread basket, and it's militarized now. My instant thinking is, would you need a military there in the first place? Meaning, what is it? America in World War II, we island hopped. You skip some islands because you don't have to fight them. You just leave them there. It's not a problem. I have one goal at the end. So militarily, would I care about Ganymede? Just as I'm thinking of that, though, of action starts, right? Or a description of the suit, right? Some other element comes that I can chew on as a reader. They're out on patrol, so it's her. Across the way is the UN Marines, and then she sees that they are running towards her, like hauling out. So of course her and her guys are like, this is it. It's about to be go time. Then she sees something else. Comms go out. I think you can sort of see chaos up above. I remember that part. Might be getting confused with the show. In any case, there's an attack coming her way. So now I'm not thinking about the military strategery of Ganymede in a galactic war. I'm thinking about what's happening. And then she's thinking about what's happening. And we get these, it's subtle. It's a subtle description. They're describing the creature. This freaky hand, these long limbs. It says the hands weren't right. They were a, quote, childhood nightmare of hands. Like a witch sneaking into your room. These just like, and that's how he'll describe some sort of fantastical elements. The authors. The authors will describe. They'll pepper in, like seasoning, these really, really nice descriptions, very creative, really good verbiage to chew on, but that don't trip you up in any way. So they end up in your brain, just loose in there, flavoring the whole thing. But then they said the scariest part is that it was clearly man-shaped, but it didn't have a suit. We're out on the surface of a planet. It's an open space. Didn't have a suit. Now again, we have this new element, but then we have our character, a Marine, a Space Marine. Bobby, they describe her as a very large, strong woman, trained Marine. She insta starts shooting it. She yells for them to shoot it. There's no comms. They can't hear. She starts blasting it. This monster, which, okay, if you read book 1, you already assuming it's something with the proto-molecule. If you haven't read book 1, you just know that there's a terrifying monster that can live in space, that's all you need. It's not all you get. What you get is this thing at speed, just hauling out, catching these Marines, these UN Marines, and like a kid, just ripping them in half without even breaking stride. No, they're in power suits, right? Mechanicalized power suits that should enable them to take, missile explosions and this kind of thing. And the suit's just getting ripped. Suit, person, doesn't matter. It's getting ripped apart. They start shooting it. She shoots it. She has, again, now more sci-fi elements. Back and forth like waves on the beach. One wave hits you, then another, then another, then another. The bullets are, these high velocity rounds. The computer tracking in the suit. She could shoot something at subsonic speed. The bullets would track through the air, whatever mess. So it's Gatling gun level. She's shooting 100 rounds in no time at all. But it's a large, slow moving object. None of them miss. Just before you know it. And all that just so you can see that the monster just doesn't care. They just go through it like water. The holes close about as fast as they open. And all that's left is some black stuff floating around. Now we all know the black fibers of protomolecule. You want nothing to do with it. But if you don't know, if you haven't read, I don't want to touch something that bleeds black fibers. I'm not trying to touch that. Along with this witch's description with these child nightmare hands. Not good. We then cut to Holden. Again, I love these descriptions. There are electrical issues on the Rocinante. He's like, it's not just the coffee maker, it's, the sink, the oven, whatever else is there. He says it's, not he, the author says, the entire galley was in open revolt. Again, it's a fun way to put it, but it's also subtly putting some life in the ship itself. And this is when you have sort of like a space voyage type, ocean voyage type story. It's you. Okay, so if you're in a boat, it's you surrounded by the ocean. You're in the Pacific. There's no hope for you other than this boat. Same with space. You're in your spaceship. Outside is 1,000% dead. It's nothing. Your whole world becomes this ship. And I think this happens to sailors sometimes too in real life, where there's a bond that grows between you and this ship. You get a feel for it. They feel real bad when they have to sink them, right? It becomes, there's like a personality that shows up. Always talk to the ship, this kind of thing. So that we're subtly getting that in the story as we go, again, without slowing down the story at all. And you start to feel for this ship subtly in your head. It's just genius. And you get here at this point, very early in. And it's just fun. I like hanging out with the crew. The crew of the Rocinante. I love it. Our next character will be Proximity Mun, I think is his name. It's a funky name. I like it. Anytime we're using an X, we're having some space fun. A botanist. He's very... Now I've had these type of almost unemotional, intellectual types. This happens in sci-fi a lot. He's sort of in that vein. But it's more, he's very scientific. He cares about his plants. He's a botanist. And it's just the time he put in that just detracts from the time he has socializing, this kind of thing. That's the type of a person that he is. But how do you show that? The attack's coming. There's just all this chaos happening. Whatever dome that they're in is about to break. They could all die if they stay there. So instead of leaving, he stops, runs back, digs in the ground, and takes up a soybean pod or root. And that's it. He goes back to the elevator and he goes on with what's happening. Subtle, but we're using action to show what this person's about. It's not even because we get inner monologue. It's not him thinking he's risking his life. If he'd have told him he's risking his life, he probably wouldn't have done it. But he acts. And in that acting, in that action, it's to save a plant, to help, to good. Good comes out in this pressurized moment. You can't be a bad person if you're saving plants. essentially. But then here he starts talking about how he's dealing with it, right? So, not Ganymede, Ios happens, tensions raise, right? There's this threat of war around him, but he's a normal citizen and he does what people do. He goes, well, it wouldn't happen where I am. I'm safe. Surely they won't attack here. We grow all the food. Then he adds a little bit that was itching at my brain when we started, which is the magnetosphere of Ganymede makes space births better, right? There's a less chance of birth defects and then higher success rate overall. So that it's where you grow food as a station and where women can come to have a child. And I'm like, starts to click, right? You could see why if there are these natural advantages, we'd congregate there. The congregating make growth. The growth makes, this ecosystem around it. But then also you could see why militarily either side would want it. If you're this nexus, you're this place people have to be, then controlling it matters. And then I'm like, boom, he just answered questions I was having that would have bugged me if they weren't answered. But then that I had also forgotten because of the other story elements he gave me, so that I was never bogged down. I mean, it's genius. It's just genius. All in this perfect flow. And explaining it is giving me this great insight into this new character that's now inserted in my story. All at once, all at the same time. No need for these long-winded, overblown descriptions. No stop the brakes on the story and just list it out. It's really, really slick. In the course of, crap hitting the fan, his daughter ends up missing. Of course, it's going to become a thing. We come back to Bobby, and we do this a couple of times with Bobby, which is I personally love this. She wakes up after the attack, and she's getting debriefed by her higher-ups. And the higher-ups asking these questions. And there's one part where it really is written this way. It's her thinking, because he's saying it kind of a weird way, like, why'd y'all start shooting? She's like, what do you mean me start shooting? She goes, in her head, didn't he know about the monster? Next line, quote, she's saying it now. Don't you know about the monster? I've had so many of these where the issue is there, right? Like this thing just happened to you. You just met this weird, freaky, glowing orb. And then you go to your people, and now you're not just saying, I saw this big freaky orb, right? The story wants it to be a mystery or this kind of thing. And it always bugs me when people don't just spill the beans. I'm like, you're here and they're not there in your meeting? Just tell them the freaky thing. Just run right out and tell them the freaky thing. There's no need to hold secrets, bro. But they always end up doing it. Well, this book does it. It's, let's not waste time. My character, this Bobby character, would just blot the beans right there. Now, from that mess, what happens to my story? This is what happens in this book. And she does it a couple of times. And I absolutely love it. We're not waiting. We're not pulling out this mystery. The mystery itself is enough of a mystery. What the crap's this creature? What's going on with this protomolecule? It's enough of a mystery that I don't need to add these other slowing elements to it. Then we come to maybe my favorite character. Avasarala. One, I love the name. The name is tremendous. Two, we have an option here to go into the politics of the world. But rather than just pick a politician, our authors pick a spy. That's what she is. That's what Avasarala is. She runs some spy crap. And that you picked a woman to be in this particular role is interesting. But two, the most interesting part is none of her opponents give any craps that she's a woman. No one's going any easier on her. She's not tricking anybody with it. She's an old lady, so we don't have the femme fatale sort of storyline. We don't bother with that. It's pure spycraft. It's I'm trying to outthink you. I'm trying to put you in the ground kind of thing. And in her lap, of course, falls Venus, which Eros plunged into. Freaky stuff has been happening with Venus. So she has this problem along with every other problem. And you would think this one overrides all of them, but no, people aren't like that. People can deal with any kind of random thing. And then how does it help my situation, help my cause? That's what all these spies are doing. So for her, it's a war, and then this mystery, and then this drive to win. Because in her head, her winning is best for humanity, for people, for her situation, right? So it's one and the same for her. And we also get great use of this inner monologue, which all the characters will do. We'll be in a conversation, and the character will think A and say B, and we get a feeling for that unspoken thing that happens between people. Really wonderfully done. But for Avasarala, it's a lot of spycraft in her head. It's a lot of she's looking at somebody, reading them, and trying to make an assessment of what they're meaning by all this information she's getting. And then what those meanings mean for sort of the overall spy game that she's in. She's so fun. She'll cuss a lot. If that offends you, she cusses a lot. And I've seen this in other stories where it's just for effect. But it isn't for effect here. You can almost feel that she'll throw these cuss words out to try and offset who she's talking to get more information. Right? So it fits the character. She's crass. She's smart. Quick. Ruthless. Driven. Impatient. All these things just in this old lady. And she just drives forward into this mess. Bobby. They end up taking Bobby to sort of a arms peace summit situation, right? Because both sides, Mars and Earth, are prepping for war, but we're not in full-blown war. And so, again, this is very realistic. This happens in real life. There is tons of talking on both sides before bombs usually start dropping in a major sense. A lot of warning, a lot of posturing. You see it from Avasarala's point of view, and it's intel. This side already thinks this, but I'm trying to figure out more advantages for when the war starts. We do a lot of this. So they bring Bobby into one of these. And it's for this spycraft kind of a reason. But that we take the time in this story to stop and have these sort of committee hearing type situations in the middle of this story. And that I'm not bored about it. Because some of the sci-fi elements are what would society do when an alien shows up? When this new element happens and we get this aftermath. I'm not bored. You're not bored at all through this hearing. And then, of course, Bobby spills the beans. Again, because why not? Bobby on Earth. She's a Mars Marine. Now, Mars is populated. But, of course, it's not going to have as many people as Earth. It also doesn't have outside, right? Which is a concept, she understands these concepts. But she walks out the door and then it's just she knows the fact that she knows she's outside without a suit is doing something to her. And then of course you hit the big blue sky, the horizon, and just to know it's just the whole world overwhelms her. Overwhelms her, she starts hyperventilating. She has to charge back into the building, get her wits about her. It's such a small moment. And it's natural. It's not, she's weak like this because she's a woman. It wouldn't have been weak if it would have been a male character. It doesn't make her less of a Marine. It's a human response to this large shift for, and then you fill in the rest. You can imagine growing up on Mars, never seeing a horizon. Everything's red all the time. Always inside. Outside means a suit. These kind of, you can imagine growing up like that and then just hitting. Same as if you grew up in the desert and you touch your toes to the Pacific, right? It's this moment in your life. And then she's sort of staggered by the people. Just one, the numbers. Just to be surrounded constantly. But not that Mars has no people. Mars is highly populated. But just for them to just walk in the street and just to be just filled with people she took a while to come to grips with. Also, some propaganda, right? So she trains hard all the time, and all Martians do, for this maybe war effort, this coming issue with Earth. But then she's like looking, and she's like, look, these are a bunch of fat, slow people. I could kill a bunch of them before they got me. I'm not worried about this war like this. These people can't run. They're not athletic. They're not about it. She gets this idea in her head. Just seeing the unwashed masses, as they say. Aaron Wright. Aaron Wright is Avasarala's sort of main opposition. He gets her sort of out of the way on the deep space ship. And she, again, this is the spycraft of it. It's a simple conversation. And it's even sort of an unlimited budget she's given. And all that just equals she missed something somewhere and she realizes it. She takes the budget. She takes the trip because she can't talk her way out of it. She's been pinned in. That's the style of spycraft we're dealing with. These conversations that feel like combat in a weird way. Very fun. Avasarala gets intel that Holden is going to Ganymede to meet a botanist named Proximity Monk. And nothing comes up on Prax because he's not anybody, right? But in the spy game, nothing doesn't mean nothing. Nothing could mean an element that I had no clue about. I'm behind the 8 ball. I'm losing the game, right? So you have a moment where Avasarala is trying to piece together the theory of what the crap's happening. She doesn't know that Holden's just been sent as sort of reconnaissance by Fred Johnson. That he's just there to look around. So she's assuming the OPA, which is sort of the Belter army you can go with, knows something. And if it's a botanist, he might know something about the protomolecule. And it's some weapon, and it's some horrible thing. Right? I love that she has, and they give us working theories she have that are wrong. A spy makes up theories. A spy then has to maneuver with those theories and then adjust to new facts on the ground. But for a while, you're making up something off of nothing, right? But that you show fallibility in this character. It doesn't make her feel like what a Mary Sue, where she just gets everything right. And then it plants in your head, wrong can happen in this story. Subtly, but it carries. So that when our friends, Holden and company end up in a dangerous situation, you do have a bit of a, what's going to happen here? Could this go south? I mean, it could. In your head, it could go bad. They end up seeing protomolecule-ness on Ganymede, and Holden freaks the crap out, right? And this is another fun part. Aftermath. So many stories like these, sci-fi or fantasy mainly, will have large events happen. I lived through a war. My plane crashed. Half the crew died. There are these big major things that can happen, but they never affect our characters. They can just sort of brush on, like, you're going to just brush off that half the crew died. You can just deal with that. No mental scars here. Here we have him. His overreaction is because of what happened. Bobby is driven because her squadron died, Avasarala from the loss in her family of one of her kids, right? It starts to affect them. Prax is manic, not eating enough, over exerting himself because his daughter's been, taken. All these things constantly play. Holden was kind of treating his crew like crap, dictatorially. And he ends up with a full scene of an apology to the crew, to his lady, to the whole lot of them. Right? And that doesn't feel like it slows the book down. It feels appropriate. And I appreciate it. To bring realism in. Because I am dealing with this proto-molecule, this out of this world alien element. And I think you need to surround it with as much real as possible. And that real can be a metal ship and not breathing in space. But the real is also how humans deal with these circumstances. Very, very fun. He gave the proto-molecule to Fred Johnson so that when he sees it on Ganymede, he thinks Fred Johnson did it. So he goes and just starts yelling at Fred Johnson and like threatening, like, if you gave this proto-molecule, I'll kill you and all this. Fred Johnson sort of takes it. And then he's like, bro, you need to shut the F up. You're fired. I'm tired of dealing with you. And he just lays it out. You're done. I'm done. I'm not dealing with you anymore. I'm going to fix your ship one last time and you can go. You're fired. And then at the end, before he leaves, he goes, hey, wasn't me. And they're sort of okay. And it's like, it needed to happen. Holden can't keep treating people this way and expecting them to bend. It's just inappropriate. You don't get to run roughshod over people. But then it leaves us with Holden and crew are now freelance. They're a freelance ship. And I absolutely love this element. We don't get enough of this in stories. How fun would it be? How fun would it be to have your own spaceship and just to be out? That's, I can just go do whatever I want. Haul this for you? Yeah, I got to get paid this much, Fight off those pirates? Yeah, why not? I got to get paid this much. It's just a working crew. No overarching anything. Nothing pulling them. It's just this. There's a freedom in this. Same with the olden days, like old westerns, where you got a horse and you can just go out into the desert and have an adventure. It's such a fun element of this story. Just the idea of having your own ship and being free in space. It's fun to do. It's fun. I want to be here. I enjoy my time in this universe. Now, obviously, they end up meeting Prax, and they want to help him find his kid. Because it's Holden, and he's a bleeding heart, and there's no way he would ever say no. Avasarala ends up recruiting Bobby. Bobby was on the outs. She sees now some behind the scenes. She was a Marine. Her friends died. She wants to avenge her friends. But the system isn't going to have that. The system has its own concerns. It's not worried about 5 Marines dead. It's trying to stop a war. So she sort of quits the Marines and didn't know what to do. Then Avasarala's like, why don't you come work for me? You can tell early on because you trust Avasarala. You trust her intelligence, that she's not just randomly doing things. Avasarala, without saying it, Avasarala has a sense that things could get squirrely, that things are a little out of her control. And so she starts grabbing assets to her. And it turns out Bobby's a good one. She's observant. We have... Okay, they describe Bobby as a large woman. I think she's like 6 something, super strong. And we use this in a few times to give... when we're scratching into sort of men-women interactions, exploring that, right? So normal guy, pretty girl, those are basic interactions. We understand those. Less interesting. You could use them in a story. They're less interesting. They work in a romance. We have a sci-fi book. So it's this neat exploration, right? And there's some instances where a guy starts acting a kind of a way around Bobby, and she's assuming, again, one element, he's one of these weird guys who's into big women. She's not about that. She didn't care. She didn't want to brush him off. It's going to be an awkward moment. Right? Human. Realistic reactions. How do I deal with such and such guy now in this light? Because you'll have to deal with it. It won't let go until it's dealt with. In another instance, it's her and another agent, I think, working with Avasarala. And she's stripping down to get into her suit, down to her underwear. Just so quick, she's used to it. She's the Marine. She's had to change clothes around other men in her crew. It's not a big deal. But for him, he's, respectful. I'm not going to look. And then his respectfulness sort of affects her like she's now a little embarrassed. We have this great interaction, right? Again, now as colleagues, but a more respectful person. And how does that look? And what does that do to their relationship? They see themselves more as... there's a higher respect for each side is gained in these appropriate reactions, right? I think then later she ends up liking the older Martian, what was the name? Our older pilot there. Again, they constantly use her size to off-kilter the room and then explore what that off-kilter does. It's not a big divergence, but it is fun that it's put in there. The romances in the book, maybe the weakest element, but I don't think that's going to ruin it for anybody. Could have done better, maybe, but I'm not going to ruin the book for that. It's always a hard element. And it's the romance between Holden and, oh man, I didn't write her name down. Naomi. It's not terrible. It's not Romeo and Juliet. Okay, it's not this big overblown thing. But it's there. You get a little taste. We end up in the end with a big space battle. Now we have Nguyen on one side with his ships. They're the bad ones. And then these other captains, Martian, Earth, on this side. And everyone's just getting sort of radio messages as to what needs to happen. So we have a moment where Nguyen's an admiral. He's trying to pull rank and say, don't fire on them. The other guy's trying to say, I have this new order that says don't do this and do that. And they're broadcasting out to both sides. Avasarala's like, I'm the highest government official here, and I say stand down, blah. Just they have a ship. It's a large warship. So at the end of the day, he can do what he wants with it. So both sides, the first opening attack is to try and get sort of the crew to switch sides. It's a hard decision to have to make. Even if the crew fired off missiles, in the end it won't be really their fault unless they go way out of bounds. People will agree he was on his ship, he had to listen to his captain, he's not paid enough to know what the crap's happening. We barely knew what was happening. So I love this moment before the bullets actually start flying, of everyone trying to talk everyone down, of everyone trying to just grab authority. I'm in charge for this reason. He ends up shooting off. Our monster is a proto-molecule soldier that was grown out of a child. Pretty vicious. But of course, the proto-molecule is too smart to be controlled. So it has sort of a short shelf-life of killing things before it implodes or rips the implosion out of itself. The rules don't apply to this proto-molecule. In any case, he shoots off all these missiles towards Mars. They have to. Holden has to go into this ship. Ship's not responding. Proto-molecule got loose in the ship and everything's gone pear-shaped. But Holden goes in and, shoots Nguyen. That's what in the end of this book is every bad guy ends up dead. The guy who kidnapped the girl gets found. She's safe and sound. They save a bunch of kids. Jules Pierre Mao, the money guy, ends up going to jail. Our Aaron Wright, this is the funnest part. Aaron Wright doesn't go to jail. He was in league with them. But it does no good for a high government official to end up in jail because then Mars says blah, 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 blah. So they just celebrate his retirement and he goes away. He got pay. He gets to retire. Everything works out for him other than he lost the game. And that's how they go out in Spy World. He just straight lost the game. And that's how the book ends. And it's fully contained. All the major elements handle themselves. And if you don't read the epilogue, you're good. You can stop here. But now I got this on audiobook. And the epilogue is, some giant thing starts coming out of Venus. So I'm like, what the crap is that about? Then Holden goes to, I think he's going to shave. I don't want to mention this. No, I won't mention it. I'm going to it's such a small nugget. I won't mention it. But there's a big, a shocking moment at the very end. And subtly the audiobook just sort of throws in a little bit of music. And as you drift off. It's the only time I think we use music in the whole book. It does not bug me. Usually when you add music or sound effects, it bugs me. But it just tosses in this little music at the end for the shocking twist at the end. And then just book's over. Really wonderfully done. Okay, ads. 100% worth it, this book. 100%. Recommendable to anyone. Yeah, we're good. I was thinking of doing Napoleon this week because of the Napoleon movie, but then I just ended up not. So that's probably me being not a good YouTuber, but what can we do? The deed's done now, right? Not recording another one of these. That ends up poorly. All right. Talk to you lovely lot next week.